can have very, very different origins or different roots, and so it's a more symptomatic way to use these frequencies to lower the pain level, and parallel it's possible to have a therapy on the basic origin of this kind of pain. The same is inflammation. You can lower inflammation processes independently, which is the origins of this process, because the frequencies we use, they are very powerful, influencing the immune system. And at the very end, such a systematic possibility to influence the balance of the body is to influence the balance of the autonomous nervous system. That means the balance between sympathicus and parasympathicus system. And so it's possible to lower the physiological stress and to increase the adaptation of the human to the surroundings, which is called, this is called homeostasis. At the end of our course, we will have some non-medical applications, which is useful too, because the method is used not only in medical therapy, but in preventive courses, especially to lower stress and to increase recovery after sports or after strong physical load. It's used in cosmetology to increase the status of the skin, to lower the skin stress, and to improve the overall skin ability to recover. I spoke about the sports, recovery after sports. And we have a special kind of treatment, it's water treatment. It's possible to influence the structure of water with electromagnetic radiation, low intensity electromagnetic radiation. And so it's used in nutrition, in complementary medicine, and in information transfer with the help of water. It's my description for the general course. I prepared some presentation, but I prefer now to describe it without presentation, so you can ask questions and I try to answer. And I try to more detailed description of our course. Thank you very much. It's my first speech. I tried to have a look at the chat. There's a question: have you been able to identify specific frequencies? There are two possible ways to how to find out the frequencies which are able to influence different systems of the human body. The first is the so-called resonance method. The resonance method is a more scientific method. It's mostly used in laboratory because you must have a very huge and sophisticated instrumentarium to measure these high this extremely high frequencies and the reaction of the human body. But this research was done, and it was found out that there are characteristic frequencies which are influencing specific systems of the human body, and these frequencies are general for all people. There are characteristic frequencies for the blood, characteristic frequencies for the immune system, and characteristic frequencies for the recovery systems. That means for the what was it? I don't know the English word, for the biochemical processes which support the recovery of the human body. And these frequencies are realized in devices which will be demonstrated during our webinar. And so you can use these devices without detailed measurements to influence the described systems. But the question of the resonance frequencies is a general question of research, because you must have in mind that for the biochemical and biophysical processes which are caused by these low intensity electromagnetic fields are not general theory. There are some processes well described biochemically and physically, but a general theory how this kind of electromagnetic radiation influence on complex biological systems doesn't exist yet. It's a more practical research. The medicine is not a natural science. I would say it's an art to heal, and that's why they are describing and preparing the methods and the results, but not the detailed processing. This is in research now. So, but the question of frequencies we can then discuss more detailed if we see the concrete diagnosis and the concrete methods of treatment. Are there any further questions?
I have one. Do you use a squid to measure the electromagnetic frequencies?
A little bit louder, please, or I tried.
Are you using a squid magnetometer to measure the electromagnetic frequencies?
No, we measure with a special spectrometer, which is measuring these frequencies. It's quite an expensive laboratory device, and so we use it to define the frequencies of every kind of device, every kind of oscillator. But the patients, the concrete people, we don't measure, we use the general frequencies.
What is the device that you use to measure the frequencies?
It's called it's a wave meter. It's called wave meter. I can send you its device produced by physical laboratories, and they measure frequencies between 3 gigahertz and gigahertz and 100 gigahertz. The producer, one of the producers is the German firm Rode and Schwarz. And the other big producer is an American firm, I don't, Equity, or I don't know, remember, but mostly these high frequencies, there are only two producers in the world who can produce devices to measure these frequencies. You must have in mind that we are dealing with low intensity, so it's the range in microwatt and milliwatt radiation. The criteria is that the tissue of the biological object is not heated at all. The increase in temperature is lower than 0.1 Kelvin. The most of the other devices, they are heated, the tissue, you know, it's close to the principles of this millimeter wave oven. But we have special devices with low intensity to use not the heating but the resonance effects.
Now, do you use any devices to measure the electromagnetic fields that the human organism is generating?
It's a specialty of our partner, the Kovatkov company.
Yes.
We have the active part. That means the influence with the help of active radiation. The measurement of the emission in different frequencies is the Kovatkov part.
Thank you.
I think it's quite interesting to work in this field. Why? I think it's two general fields in human health which are highly underestimated. It's the influence of low intensity electromagnetic radiation in different frequencies, starting with the light, with light, and then lower frequencies up to the mobile phone frequency range. And the other field is we underestimate noise. That means low intensity noise, but permanent noise damages the balance of the autonomous nervous system too. And all the general rules to limit the noise emission, they are limit the emission in the very high range, but the low range of permanent noise is underestimated too.
Dr. Zenke.
Hello.
Hello, my name is François from Vancouver, Canada. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
I was a little bit late. I had to reboot, so I was a little bit late. I missed a little bit, so I need to understand better. I'll summarize briefly. So you're using a millimeter wave therapy, which has a resonant effect, or which we can call healing effect at the molecular level. We know now that the cell phone now are actually is not very healthy for the human body. A lot of research is confirming that. And so that millimeter wave therapy, how much lower are we talking about compared to cell phones? Is it?
Excuse me for a moment. I have no audio signal, no good audio signal. I try to increase.
Do you hear me now?
Can you repeat, please, the question?
Yeah, do you hear me now?
Much better now. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, like I was saying before, I was a little bit late, so I'm just trying to summarize what I understood from what your short presentation is, that you use what's called a millimeter wave therapy, which has a resonant effect on the human body or on the molecular level. So, what you talked about is a form of radiation. So, we're talking about something that doesn't it has an effect on the resonance, right? It's not, it doesn't heat like microwaves or like a cell phone. So is that correct?
Yeah. As I told before, there's no full theoretical description about the influence of this kind of radiation to the human body. There are different hypotheses, and there are a good medical evidence. Medical evidence means that you have normally different groups, let's say a treated group with a method and blind group or placebo group and a group without any treatment to compare. And if the results of the treated group is better, then in medical sense, it's evidence that the method is working. But there is no description in many cases how it's working. It's not only our method. In many of the drugs, you can't describe in detail how they are working biochemically, but you can describe by statistics that they give a positive effect in medicine therapy. So there is evidence that this method is working, that the therapy is efficient, but there's no a full model how it works inside the human body. And so we have developed a model or a systematic how to describe the therapy. And we have three, as I told, three strategies or three fields. The first field is the immediate influence on the skin. Skin inflammations, wound healing, healing after surgery. You can find a positive effect if you treat immediately the place where the inflammation is or the surrounding with millimeter waves, with extremely high frequency waves with low intensity. Then the second, you have we call it systematic response. It's very close to the principles of acupuncture. That means you can influence with low intensity millimeter waves or low intensity electromagnetic radiation in gigahertz the biological active points and can have the same results when you are working with a laser or with needles to influence these points. And the third is that you can have a resonance, it's called resonance response. That means if you choose certain frequencies and influence the body, then you have a reaction of different physiological systems. For example, if you influence the middle of the sternum on the breast, then you can by chemical show that an increase in activity of the immune system. So this is a short description. We will describe all this more detailed during the webinar.
Okay, thank you.
Are there some further questions? I think it's would be interesting for you to hear the webinar or to look at afterwards. As far as I know, there will be a recording of the webinar. And Dr. Istomina from Russia, she is a physiotherapist practically working with this method more than 20 years. And so we can together show you some of the results of theoretical research, and she has a huge amount of practical experience and show you and answer your question if you have questions according to concrete therapy.
Dr. Zenke, I have another question for you. This is François from Vancouver. May I ask another question, please?
Who else?
Hello, Dr. Zenke.
Yeah, yeah.
This is François from Vancouver, Canada. I have another question. May I ask you another question?
Yeah, please ask.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to understand here is that the millimeter wave therapy, it's something that's still not well fully understood at the molecular level, right? So
Yeah.
what is the benefit of using that therapy instead of using traditional therapy in ER centers and hospitals? So what makes this more effective, or what makes this possible in the future in ER treatments in hospital, or let's say for private clinics? So what is the selling point of this millimeter wave therapy compared to what we've been using for many decades before?
As I told you, you can use it as a single method or in co-therapy. In most cases, the co-therapy fastens the process and increases the level of the other therapy methods. For instance, it's in Russia, it's widely used in wound healing after surgery. And if you use this method together with a normal wound process, you have smaller scares and a faster process of healing and a lower risk of inflammation, for instance. The other thing is that you have only few methods which can influence the special physiological systems of the body. I can tell you an example. We have done a research in the field of sports. There's a winter sport, it's called biathlon. That means shooting and skiing together. And they have a cycle of competitions in the winter time that nearly every weekend they have another competition in another place. And it's not only the aim of the training is not only to improve the abilities in skiing and shooting, but to improve the recovery, because it's much depends the success in this kind of sport and the ability to recover after and to be fit in the next weekend. And we could show that with the help of this method, influencing the autonomous nervous system, balancing this and improving the physiological balance, the recovery is better than without the method. So it's not a panacea, it not heals everything, but in some special cases, we will describe this. We have an improved process or even a more effective process of treatment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I try to look at the chat. Ms. Odell Karen is writing about the self-healing processes. The self-healing is, of course, a central point in all this therapy. But in fact, if you look in medicine, most of the treatments are treatments supporting the self-healing process of the human body, in my opinion. Okay. I think if there are no additional questions, we can finish for today. What do you think? There's another question. Someone has a potential clot in the artery. How often can you repeat the blood cleansing program? If you use the treatment with low intensity, extremely high frequency radiation, you have an effect of adaptation of the body to this kind of influence. You can compare it with the use of different pharmaceutical drugs. If you use them regularly, the body has an adaptation process, and the influence is decreasing. So the practical experience of the Russian physiotherapists show that you must organize treatment circles and circles without treatment or recovery. Normally, they said a treatment period should last about 2 weeks, and then you must have a 2 weeks period without treatment to avoid this adaptation process of the body. But we will describe this detailed during our practical demonstrations. Okay. Then thank you all. And I hope to see you during the webinar next year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Goodbye.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.